Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through the research, articles, and notes to extract the most potent insights crafted just for you.
That's right.
Think back to a moment in your life, maybe trying to order coffee in another country, struggling through a high school language class, or perhaps moving to a new place and suddenly finding yourself immersed in a completely foreign linguistic world. It's often frustrating, sometimes exhilarating, and always truly a journey.
It's that shared human experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
The universal challenge and triumph of bridging communication gaps that makes today's deep dive so compelling, I think.
Absolutely.
We're dissecting second language acquisition, or SLA, the fascinating, intricate process of how we master any language after our very first.
Our mission today isn't just to define terms, though we'll do some of that.
Right.
We're going to unpack the core concepts, explore the major theories attempting to explain this often mysterious process, and most importantly, truly understand the internal and external factors that sculpt every single learner's unique journey.
Yeah, we want to cut through the noise.
Our aim is to give you a profound shortcut, really.
Exactly. Our goal is to help you understand why some aspects of learning in L2 feel incredibly natural, almost effortless, while others remain a constant uphill struggle.
So by the end of this, hopefully, you'll not only gain a clearer perspective on your own learning, but also insights into how to maybe better support others on their linguistic adventure.
That's the plan.
Okay, let's unpack this then. We use first language and second language all the time, but what do these distinctions fundamentally tell us about how we learn?
Well, the initial insight here is the profound difference in how we acquire them. Your first language, L1, that's your mother tongue.
Right.
It's absorbed naturally from infancy, usually through immersion and constant, often unconscious interaction. It forms the very foundation of your thought, your communication, even your identity. It's like organic growth, deeply embedded.
So it's not something we actively study as kids. It just,
Yeah.
well, it just happens as we live.
Precisely. The second language, L2, on the other hand, is any language learned after your L1. And this often involves a more conscious effort,
Right, like in a classroom.
or even informally, through deliberate exposure. It's about actively constructing a new mental grammar, not just collecting words or rules. You're basically building a new linguistic operating system alongside your first one.
But the term second language itself can be a bit limiting, can't it? Because a language might play lots of different roles in someone's life.
Absolutely. The role a language plays is critical. A foreign language, for example, isn't widely spoken where you live.
Like English in rural Nepal, you mentioned. Learned it in school, mostly.
Exactly. Limited real-life use, typically. Then there's the library language, used more for academic stuff, reading scholarly texts. English often functions this way in Nepalese universities, for instance. Focus on reading.
And an auxiliary language is kind of like a bridge, a common ground.
That's a great way to put it. It facilitates communication between people with different mother tongues. A link language. English is a global one, obviously.
Sure.
And locally, Nepali can play that role among different linguistic groups within Nepal itself.
So the takeaway for you listening is that these aren't just labels. They shape why you're learning, how you practice, and what success even looks like, right?
Totally. Learning for tourism is vastly different than learning as an immigrant who needs it for daily life.
That's a powerful point. So when we compare L1 and L2 learning, what's the fundamental difference? Is it just age or something deeper?
Well, zooming out, the big thing is how L1 acquisition is almost always successful for kids.
Yeah.
It seems driven by innate biological stuff.
Like Chomsky's universal grammar idea.
Exactly, that we're kind of hardwired for language. But L2 learning often happens later when maybe that biological edge isn't as strong.
So it takes more conscious effort, more instruction.
Generally, yes. Now, L2 learners do have advantages. They have their L1 knowledge, mature thinking skills. They can analyze things explicitly.
But that L1 knowledge can also mess things up sometimes, right? L1 interference.
That's the flip side. You might try to apply your L1 grammar rules directly to the L2, and it just doesn't work.
Like our example earlier, a Nepali speaker translating sentence structure literally into English.
Precisely that. Or, say, a Spanish speaker mixing up is and has because of how 10 works in Spanish.
Gotcha.
So the real point is, L1 learning is pretty uniform, almost guaranteed. L2 outcomes, they're all over the map. Depends hugely on age, motivation, context, how much you hear it.
Right. It's not just about how hard you try. Some people get near native, others stick to basics.
And the reasons are complex.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Now let's get into the science of how we learn. The theories have definitely changed over time.
Oh, absolutely. Early on, you had the behaviorist framework. Skinner, back in the 50s.
Stimulus response, right? Like
Yeah.
training a parrot.
Pretty much. Language learning was seen as habit formation.
Yeah.
Stimulus, response, reinforcement. Errors were just bad habits you needed to drill out of existence.
Just repeat it correctly until it sticks, without worrying about what's happening in the brain.
Exactly. But that view got heavily criticized. It just didn't capture the complexity of human language. Way too simple. The big shift came with cognitive approaches, especially Chomsky's critique. The focus swung dramatically from just looking at behavior to looking at the internal mental processes, what's going on inside the learner's head.
And this is where errors stop being bad and start being interesting.
Yes, that was a key insight. Quarter's error analysis in the 60s. He argued errors aren't just failures, they're positive evidence.
Evidence of what?
Evidence of the learning process itself. They show the developmental stages the learner is going through, the hypotheses they're testing about the new language.
Wow. So messing up is actually a sign your brain is working hard to figure things out.
That's the core idea. It's a huge psychological shift for learners, right? Stops you feeling like a failure for making mistakes.
Definitely. And then came interlanguage, which built on that.
Right. So Linker in the 70s. Interlanguage is the learner's own unique linguistic system. It's transitional.
Meaning it's not the L1 and it's not quite the L2 yet.
Exactly. It's systematic. It has rules, even if those rules aren't the correct L2 rules. It gets influenced by your L1 by overgeneralizing L2 rules you have learned.
Like saying goed instead of went.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
And sometimes certain incorrect forms can get stuck. That's fossilization. They just persist.
So the amazing thing isn't just that we make errors, but that our brain is actively creating its own temporary language version.
Yes. With its own logic. Those errors are signs of a very active, creative linguistic mind sorting things out.
Can you give us that Nepal example again? How would interlanguage show up there?
Sure. A Nepali learner might consistently say, he go school. That subject-verb structure might just stabilize in their interlanguage for a while, even if they learn other conjugations correctly. It's a snapshot of their system at that point.
Fascinating. The brain isn't passive, it's actively building. Which links back to that innate blueprint idea, universal grammar.
It does. The idea behind UG is we're born with this fundamental language faculty. And L2 learners seem to draw on these universal principles too. Things like structure dependency. Knowing grammar depends on structure, not just word order.
And we adjust settings, like parameters.
What's the idea? Based on the input, you set language-specific parameters. So Nepali speakers learning English have to reset their word order parameter from SOV to SVO.
Subject, object, verb to subject, verb, object.
Right. And they have to learn not to drop the subject, which is allowed in Nepali. That's the pro-drop parameter because English needs an explicit subject most of the time. UG helps explain how we make these systematic shifts.
Okay. And then there's Krashen's monitor model. I hear that one mentioned a lot. Seems very intuitive.
It is very influential, partly because it feels relatable. Krashen's model from 82 has 5 main hypotheses.
Okay.
But the big idea, the one people really latched onto, is the difference between subconscious acquisition and conscious learning.
Acquisition versus learning, what's the difference?
Acquisition is picking up language naturally, like kids do with L1, mainly through understanding messages, what he called comprehensible input, stuff that's just a little bit beyond your current level, his I+1.
Okay.
Learning, on the other hand, is conscious knowledge about language, knowing the rules, grammar terms, stuff you get in classrooms.
And Krashen thought acquisition was better.
Much more effective for fluency, yes.
Yeah.
He argued that conscious learning mainly just acts as a monitor or an editor. It lets you check and correct yourself, but it doesn't build fluency itself.
Huh. So you could feel like you're not learning much just by, say, watching TV in another language, but that passive exposure might actually be building your fluency more than memorizing verb tables.
That was his argument. Natural communication and meaningful exposure are key. He also talked about a natural order for learning grammar points and an effective filter. How feelings like anxiety or low motivation can block acquisition, even if the input is good.
Makes sense. Anxiety definitely doesn't help learning.
For sure. Now, his model got criticized hard to test some parts, maybe downplayed the role of actually speaking, but it massively shifted focus towards communication and comprehensible input in teaching.
Which leads nicely into thinking about language as a tool, right? Not just rules on a page.
Exactly. Functional approaches like Halliday's work really emphasize using language to do things, to communicate meaning, achieve goals.
And interaction becomes really important here.
Crucial. Long's interaction hypothesis, built on Krashen, arguing that it's not just input, but the negotiation of meaning during interaction that drives learning.
Like when you don't understand and you ask for clarification or someone rephrases for you, that back and forth.
Precisely. Those moments where you work together to understand each other, that's where the learning happens, according to Long. And then Swain's output hypothesis added another layer.
Output. So actually producing language.
Yeah.
Speaking or writing.
Yes. Swain argued that trying to produce language pushes you. It makes you notice gaps in your knowledge. Oh, how do I say that? And helps you refine your control over the language.
So the big insight is you learn language best by using it, interacting, trying to get your meaning across, expressing yourself.
That's the essence of it. It's a dynamic tool for interaction and identity, not just a static code to be learned. And using it actively is how you truly acquire it.
Okay, so we've covered the internal stuff, theories about the mind. What about the world around the learner? Social factors, context.
Yeah.
How much do they matter?
Hugely. At the micro level, think about input and interaction again. Krashen's comprehensible input, I+1, is important, sure.
Yeah.
But Long's interaction hypothesis really zooms in on the power of negotiating meaning. All those little moments. Sorry, what was it? Can you say that again? You mean, that's active learning through communication.
I can picture that, like a Nepali student asking, what means this word? And a teacher gently guiding them to, what does this word mean? Or explaining it differently. Learning happens right there.
Perfect example. That co-construction drives acquisition. But there's a nuance here. Acquisition can happen without tons of interaction. Think about someone learning just by reading a lot or listening silently or watching movies, if the input is rich and understandable.
Right. You can absorb a lot passively.
But conversely, just interacting isn't a magic bullet either. You could be interacting constantly, maybe in an English medium school in Nepal, but if you're not paying attention, not motivated, or not getting useful feedback, you might not acquire much.
So quality matters, not just quantity, what your brain does with the interaction.
Exactly. Processing matters. Now, stepping back, looking at the macro level, bigger forces are at play.
Like the status of the language itself.
Definitely. The global and national status of languages has a massive, often invisible impact. English, being a global lingua franca, gives a huge prestige economic value.
Which motivates people.
Absolutely. In Nepal, for example, many parents push for English education because they see it as key to jobs, opportunities, upward mobility. That's powerful extrinsic motivation. National languages, like Nepali, serve to unify, while local mother tongues are vital for cultural identity. The perceived power and usefulness of these languages shape everything.
And language is so tied up with who we are, isn't it? Identity.
Profoundly. Norton's work highlighted this. Language learning is deeply linked to social identity. Things like your ethnicity, caste, social class. They can drastically affect your access to good learning resources, your confidence using the language.
So like kids from wealthier urban families in Nepal might get way more English exposure outside school than kids in rural areas.
That's a stark reality. More access to travel, media, private schools. It creates huge inequalities in learning outcomes. The insight here is that learning a language isn't just cognitive, it's a social act, embedded in power dynamics and how you see yourself and how others see you.
And then you have the big institutions, schools, governments. They set the stage.
Totally. Institutional forces are huge constraints, are facilitators. Government policies on curriculum, which language is used for instruction, the medium of instruction. These things shape opportunities on a massive scale.
The English medium versus Nepali medium school debate in Nepal is a prime example of that, right?
Exactly. Those policy choices directly impact who gets exposed to which language, when, and how well. It's a top-down structuring of the whole linguistic environment.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot on the outside influencing things. Let's bring it back to the individual learner again, but connect them to these bigger forces. What internal factors does each person bring?
Well, age is always the big one people talk about. The critical period hypothesis.
The idea that kids are just better language learners.
Sort of. The idea is they have a biological advantage for achieving native-like fluency, especially pronunciation. You see it with young kids in those English medium schools in Nepal, sometimes developing amazing accents naturally.
But adults can learn languages very well, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And often faster initially because they have better cognitive strategies, problem-solving skills. They might just struggle more to lose their L1 accent completely. So it's not that adults can't learn. It's more nuanced. Maybe a trade-off between initial speed and ultimate accent.
Okay. And motivation.
Yeah.
Seems obviously crucial.
Oh, it's critical. Gardner talked about instrumental motivation learning for practical reasons. Pass an exam, get a job, emigrate. very common in Nepal for English,
Makes sense.
and integrated motivation wanting to connect with the L2 speakers, the culture. Both work, but instrumental might give that initial push, while integrative could sustain learning long term.
Then there's aptitude, just a natural knack for languages.
Yeah, some people do seem to pick up languages more easily. Carol identified things like phonetic coding ability, how well you hear and remember new sounds, grammatical sensitivity, memory. Higher aptitude helps.
It's everything.
Not at all.
Yep.
High motivation, good strategies, lots of exposure can make a huge difference, even with lower natural aptitude.
What about personality? Does being an extrovert help?
It can. Extroverts might seek out more chances to talk, take more risks. Shyer learners, like maybe in some big Nepalese classrooms, might hold back from speaking, which limits practice. Durnyai emphasized willingness to communicate as being really key, just being willing to try.
And strategies, the actual techniques people use.
Yes, conscious actions. Oxford categorized them. Cognitive, like analyzing grammar. Metacognitive, planning your study, monitoring your progress. Social, practicing with others, asking questions. Effective, managing anxiety, staying motivated.
And better learners use more strategies.
They tend to use a wider range of strategies, and more effectively. They're more active and aware in their learning.
And finally, your first language proficiency matters too.
It does. Cummins suggested that strong L1 skills actually help L2 learning. Skills like reading comprehension, how language works in general, they can transfer.
But we also said L1 can interfere.
Right. It's that double-edged sword again. Provides a foundation, but can also cause errors in grammar or pronunciation.
Okay, so that's the learner within. Now, quickly, those external factors, again, politics, economics, tech, how do they directly hit the learner?
Well, political factors like government curriculum choices or language policies directly dictate what's taught, how it's taught, and who gets access. The medium of instruction debate in Nepal is pure politics impacting language learning daily.
And economics, the value of English.
Hugely important. The global economy puts a premium on English for jobs, migration, social status. This creates pressure.
And inequality.
Big time. Wealthier families in Nepal can afford private English schools, tutors, resources. Poorer families in government schools often have less exposure, fewer resources, maybe less qualified teachers. So economic status directly creates unequal language learning opportunities. It reinforces social divides.
And technology, a potential equalizer.
Potentially, yes. The internet, apps, online content, they offer incredible access to authentic language input, practice tools.
Yeah.
Learners in Nepal are using YouTube, Duolingo, all sorts of things.
Yeah, there's always a but.
But the digital divide is real. Access to reliable internet devices, it's not equal. Urban areas often have much better access than rural ones in Nepal. So tech helps, but it doesn't magically erase the inequalities created by political and economic factors. It can even widen them sometimes.
What a journey we've taken. Okay, so we've covered so much ground. From defining L1 and L2, through all those theories, behaviorism, error analysis, interlanguage, UG, Krashen, and then tying it all together with the internal factors like age and motivation, and the external context of society, politics, economics, really is a complex tapestry.
It really is. What strikes me most is that second language acquisition isn't just about learning grammar or vocab. It's this incredibly multifaceted process. It's shaped by our brains, yes, but also our personalities, our drive, our interactions, and these huge forces, social, political, economic, swirling around us.
It's like this constant dance between the person and their world.
Exactly, a dynamic dance.
So what are the big implications here for teachers, policymakers, or even just for us trying to learn a language or help someone else?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that understanding all these factors is crucial for anything practical. For teachers, it means you can't use a one-size-fits-all approach. You need different strategies, maybe more play and immersion for kids, more explicit grammar for adults who benefit from analysis. You need to consider motivation, anxiety.
Treat the whole learner.
Precisely. And for policymakers, it means really thinking about equity. How do you improve access for everyone, especially in rural or marginalized communities? How do you balance promoting global languages like English, which people need for opportunities, with protecting and valuing national and local languages, which are vital for identity?
It's about seeing the whole picture, the learner and their entire environment.
Absolutely. Recognizing all the pieces involved.
So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. As you reflect on your own language journey, maybe learning English or another language, or even watching your kids learn, What interplay of these internal factors, your motivation, your age back then, your personality and external factors, the school you went to, the resources you had, the status of the language, do you see most clearly shaping things?
Where do you notice the biggest advantages or the biggest hurdles in the linguistic landscape around you?
That's definitely a powerful question to mull over, bringing all this theory right back to lived experience.
It really connects the dots.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into second language acquisition. We hope you feel a little more well-informed, perhaps a bit more empathetic towards language learners, including yourself, and definitely more curious about the amazing, complex ways languages shape our lives and our world.